Hello everyone, once again welcome to this video where I will take you through climate change causes and its impacts. In the last video, remember, I explained to you about climate change, vulnerability, the different components of climate change systems and their interactions. I hope you watched those videos. If you didn't, I encourage you to look for those videos and be able to watch them so that you are able to understand what we discussed earlier and benefit from this particular video. My name is Mgt Climate. I'm a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University in the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Department of Environment, Natural Resources and Tourism. So, climate change causes and impacts. We all understand there are different causes of climate change and different impacts. And depending on what the element that is exposed, the impacts will vary according to systems, according to places, according to the vulnerabilities of a particular exposed element. And also the causes vary a lot because they are natural causes, but also they are human-related causes, what we call anthropogenic causes. So climate change is linked to a number of causes ranging from internal variations in some climate systems to external forcing due to anthropogenic activities. However, the current observed changes, most of the changes we see now are attributed to the human activities. So the impacts we see are largely attributed to human activities through the release of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So because of the human activities, because of the people destroying environmental systems in their effort to produce, in their quest for land to settle and everything, they are releasing a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, including carbon dioxide and many other gases. And because of this, most of the changes we see in climate and the impacts are largely attributed to this, as opposed to internal variations. Now, to begin with the natural causes, we have one we call the Milankovitch cycles. On the different time scales of thousands of years, changes in the character of the Earth's orbit around the Sun and in its rotation can significantly affect the way in which the energy from the Sun is distributed by seasons. For example, as the Earth rotates, the Sun is moving, there are places that will be receiving strong solar radiation and others receiving less. For example, we know there are particular places in the world, for example, if you go to the global north, that only receive hot sun in a certain periods of the time. So because of these earth rotations, certain climates can change in certain places and the people can be able to experience different climates. We also have volcanic eruptions. Okay, these cause short-term cooling because of these eruptions, pumping gases, pumping dust, pumping ash and dust into the atmosphere. We get the sunlight blocked, and therefore these particular areas not receiving enough solar radiation, not receiving enough hot sunshine, and therefore tending to cool, and the climate in that areas are tending to change. So this volcanic debris also includes sulfur dioxide that combines with the water vapor and dust in the atmosphere to form what we call sulfate aerosols. These also reflect sunlight away from the Earth's surface and therefore can cause some changes in the climate. We have also the internal variability. As I said, some changes in climate have no external triggers. These changes can instead be caused by interactions within the climate systems. Okay, of course, often involving positive feedback, like the El Nino, the La Nina cycles, which can have temporary warming or cooling within the atmosphere. We have solar variations. The sun, as we know, is the source of energy for the Earth's climate systems. Although this energy appears constant from the everyday life, you may think it's constant, but there are only some small changes over an extended period of time, and these changes can lead to changes in the climate. Okay, we have the greenhouse effect. We all know, by the way, that if there was no greenhouse effect, the planet Earth would not be worth living due to too much coldness. If we didn't have this kind of warming, we wouldn't survive, okay, on this Earth. But once the energy reaches the Earth's surface, it is absorbed, warms the land and ocean surface of the planet, and then it is re-emitted back to the atmosphere. So the amount of heat re-emitted and eventually lost in space need to be equal to the amount that is being gained from the sun, if the temperature of the planet is to remain constant. So these greenhouse gases absorb the outgoing energy, okay, trapping it near the Earth's surface and causing more warming. However, what we are concerned now about this greenhouse effect is what we refer to the enhanced greenhouse effect. And this comes because of human activities, okay, releasing lots of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, increasing the concentration. Now, when these greenhouse gases increase in the atmosphere, especially carbon dioxide, they block off, okay, the solar radiation that would be emitted back to the atmosphere and keep it near the Earth's surface. And this is what causes, the temperatures to rise and the Earth to be too warm. And this is the effect we are concerned, and this is what we call the enhanced greenhouse effect. But without that, if we didn't have that enhanced one, we would be very happy with the natural greenhouse effects. Here, what we should be worried about is the enhanced one, where human activities are releasing a lot more and more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and causing more warming. Now, those were natural causes. We also have the human-related causes. And the current observed changes in the climatic variables, as I said, are largely attributed to human activities. The major source of greenhouse gases, like mainly carbon dioxide and methane and many others, is from different sectors that have been, of course, mentioned as major sources. And these include transport and industry. We all know our transport industries. If for those who are from Uganda, you believe me, the commuter taxis, the petrol and diesel engines and generators that are happening, the aeroplanes from different places are major sources of greenhouse gases. We have also the agricultural sector, where we are mechanizing, where we are using the slash and burn, we are deforesting, cutting the trees, livestock is unregulated, and all these are sources of greenhouse gases. We have the manufacturing industry, where we are just dumping the waste. Recently, some of you in Uganda, you saw the Kitezi incidences. People just dump the waste the way they want, and because of this, we are releasing more and more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, enhancing the effect. Here, on this particular part, I want to leave you with one question, where I would like you to discuss the individual human-related causes of climate change. Let us we have, of course, the global warming and its impacts. We all know global warming is really a current global problem, where we see a long-term increase in average global temperatures. When carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases accumulate in the atmosphere, we all know they absorb the radiant heat that is reflected from the Earth's surface that will escape to the spaces in the atmosphere. And as a result, the radiant heat is kept near the Earth's surface that causes it to be hot. The greenhouse gas effect, the greenhouse effect as we talked about. And this has, of course, very many impacts that are on different systems, both human and natural systems. In this diagram, I represent or I show the different impacts. We have greenhouse gases trapped in the atmosphere in the center. You have several other impacts, including melting snow and ice. You have the habitats being lost. For example, you have the changing in the conditions of plants. You have the changes in the seasons, more evaporation. You have warmer oceans, rising sea levels. So all these are entangled and they are affecting each other, some of them having cascading effects, some of them depending on each other and causing different impacts. Of course, we have climate changes being predicted and being observed in different places. Here I give you the case for Uganda, where I give you a snapshot on the observed and projected temperature trends in Uganda. Okay? And we have seen increasing the temperatures have increased by up to 1.5 degrees centigrade across much of the Ugandan areas, and that's according to FANG, with the typical rates of warming around 0.2 per decade. Now, this transition to an even warmer climate is likely to amplify the impacts of decreasing rainfall and periodic droughts. Some of these events we are already witnessing them in Uganda and in most parts of Uganda and in the neighboring countries. And these will likely reduce, of course, crop harvests and pasture availability. So Uganda is becoming drier in many parts and hotter, which is consistent with an increase in atmospheric saturations, bringing, of course, dry stabilizing air during the March, June, and June-September rainy seasons. Here, of course, FANG gives us the maps, and I'm trying to give you a snapshot of these, and we see increase in temperatures in many areas, especially the Karamoja areas and some parts of Uganda. We also see increases in rainfall in some areas like around Lake Victoria and Albert, but we see decrease in rainfall specifically in northwestern and the southeastern. And all these, as I said, have impacts on the productivity in the agriculture sector, but also impacts on crop growth, impacts on the harvest, and eventually impacts on infrastructure. And all these have an implication on food security and survival of the human race. So from those, I want to conclude this video with an assignment, also again, where I would like you to think about some of the impacts, but also discuss among yourselves using Uganda as a case study again. You explain the current and likely future impacts of climate change to the different sectors. And here the sectors I talk about is the agriculture and forestry sector. So look at those impacts that are currently existing, but also the likely future impacts of climate change on agriculture and forestry sector, on the human health and comfort, but also on societal norms and systems, and lastly on ecosystems. So what are those current and likely future impacts of climate change to the agriculture and the forest sector, the human health and comfort, societal norms and systems, but also ecosystems? Okay. Thank you all of you for listening and watching this video. We'll come back in another session to continue from here, where I will take you through the climate change risk management now itself. Having understood climate change and its impacts, we shall now be able to dive into the real climate change risk management. Thank you very much.